Welcome back to Tribe Company Culture Academy. In the next two videos, we are going to look at what leaders should really know about how company culture has been evolving and how we've gotten ourselves into sort of this predicament where it's become something that we know is important, but we don't really know where to go with it. So this is part one of From Factory Lines to Creative Minds, the shift every modern leader needs to understand. And in order to know how we've come to the company culture predicament of today, we're going to have to do a bit of a history lesson. So just like it helps to look at different business models and when they work best, we are going to do that for company culture. For any history buffs, you may already know this. If you're not interested in history, please hang in there with me. I know this is going to be a little bit of a dry video. Try to make it as interesting as possible, but it is really important to know so that we can move company culture forward and evolve it in a way that actually benefits you as a company leader. So this is your 5-minute crash course on the immediate history of company culture. So many of the ways that we have understood and managed the world were forged in a much different time. A less connected time, a slower time. Our current conception of how to run a business was born in about the late 1700s during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Most companies are still sort of following the root paradigms of the Industrial Revolution that have dominated wealth creation for the last almost 300 years. So this model focuses on the goal of minimizing variation. The companies that were most profitable during this time were high volume, low error manufacturing, where the majority of their workforce was making the same product in the same way over and over again. So in order to fulfill on this rinse and repeat process, the typical management and culture models of these companies were what is known as command and control. This is sort of reminiscent of a discipline and structure from the military, where the term I think is also used. It's a pretty self-explanatory term, but let's unpack it a little anyways. The primary driver in a culture of command and control is a system of authority, right? This orients everyone toward the same goal, but it's highly inflexible and prone to abuse of power because you have distinct enforced hierarchy and very little room for creativity and innovation. If you've seen the movie Flaming Hot, it's a pretty good example of this. If you haven't, I'll give you a little synopsis. So Flaming Hot is the sort of biographical depiction of a man who worked for Frito-Lay's. He was a janitor at their company, and he had a great idea that could help save the jobs of the factory that he worked at. There was lots of layoffs going on. This company wasn't really innovating. It didn't really know how to appeal to the market anymore. And even though this guy had a really good idea, he had to overcome a lot of obstacles to be heard. He ultimately, essentially saves the company with the concept of Flaming Hot, this flavor that they introduce across their product line. It becomes popular and shows how innovation is that huge component of company growth. Unfortunately, this is a great example of how factory workers have been treated and the general mindset of executive management. Whether or not the movie depiction of the story is fully accurate or just accurate to the biography that it's based on, it anecdotally shows how factories workers' jobs can be used to balance the books, how their contributions are often overlooked, and how executives can sabotage great ideas just because they didn't come up with the idea themselves. The janitor has to go head-to-head at one point with one of the executives who's supposed to be testing his idea in the market and basically just fobs it off. So these are perfect demonstrations of how poor culture stifles creativity and innovation required for companies to evolve and survive. And where power is abused, this generally leads to a culture of fear. And while a culture of fear and authoritarian leadership may work okay for the outcomes of manufacturing, making the same thing in the same way over and over, it doesn't work if your goal is to involve creativity and innovation. Along the way, as we moved through the Industrial Revolution, some of the human labor involved in manufacturing has started to become replaced with more efficient tools, systems, and robotics. And there are also interesting factors that influence the way the industrial nations sort of evolved their ideas around business, like the efficiency movement and the concept of shareholder supremacy. but we're not going to touch those. This is a 5-minute crash course. What is most applicable to today is that technologies that began the transition into the information age started emerging in the mid-20th century. And according to statistics about the US, the percentage of their economy attributed to industry, so more the manufacturing part and information, the information businesses started to dominate the economy between the 1960s and 70s. So we've started making a transition and we are fully into a majority of the information age between the 60s and 70s. As we fast forward to today, we literally carry around devices in our pockets that give us more connection and global access than ever before. I think I heard recently that there's more computing power in a cell phone than they had to put a man on the moon. So there has been a major shift in what type of skills are needed in the workplace today. If you think about it, what skills does the average employee need to be a great worker in a manufacturing job? I can tell you firsthand, having worked in an automotive factory on the assembly line, I did not need much training at all to figure out how these jobs that I had to do worked. And I had no prior experience. In fact, I was on a floating relief team, so I was often in different jobs throughout the sort of assembly department on any given day. But when you're screwing the same screw into the same spot on the car with the same tool over and over again, you don't need to be very skilled to get or maintain that job. Even today, if you're running a factory or managing a safety critical environment, or you want the same thing produced identically with great reliability, a rules and processes based culture is important and will work effectively. It certainly doesn't mean that you have to have command and control, but leaning more heavily on the importance of doing things a certain way can be crucial in certain situations. But as we just saw, even since the 60s and 70s, knowledge-intensive environments in the information age have become the majority of the economy. So let's think about what kind of skills does the average employee need to be a great worker in an information job, information just for the information age, not a specifically information job. On the top of the list are probably going to be innovation and creativity. I've seen it in a lot of job descriptions these days. But creativity and innovation required for information companies need a much different kind of environment to command and control management styles and culture. Even if people are motivated by fear, they can't use the parts of the brain required for imagination. Imagination is the root of creativity and innovation. Fear causes the brain to move all of the resources into the fight, flight, freeze response areas. And all of the energy of the imagination is going into just trying to protect yourself from getting fired, or a weird coworker, or a boss that yells at you, or whatever it happens to be, right? When the world today is driven by ideas and ingenuity, people have to bring their brains to work and collaborate with each other to solve problems and accomplish business results in an agile way. Thus, we need a major update from the 300-ish-year-old model that has been lingering for decades into the information age. We are well past the Industrial Revolution that started centuries ago. And during the past 70-ish years, the world of business has shifted from one dominated by reliable repeatability to one dominated by the need for knowledge resources, and therefore cultures that support knowledge-intensive workplaces. When we shifted more and more from agriculture to industry, the priorities and culture shifted to optimize the new focus. So what's with the delay on moving from an industrial mindset to an information age focused one? Why does the conventional management wisdom remain focused on the idea of needing to control the workforce through authority and fear and processes and procedures? Those are great questions. The answer is probably more simplistic than you think. When people benefit from a system, they don't want it to change. For many people who have management and leadership positions, they enjoy the power and the feelings of authority that come with an old school culture model. There may be a part that's simply ignorance, but there is a growing body of research that shows group dynamics, organizational behavior, human-centric leadership, and what makes for a great company culture. So it's seeming more and more like a little bit of willful ignorance, maybe, just so that they can keep going with cultures that work for them. These same leaders who can't seem to evolve with the culture needs, though, can adopt new technologies for their business all the time. They evolve business models all the time. They understand that it helps them make more money. But ironically, so does a strong company culture. They just don't want to do what it takes, right? To create a great culture, because it would mean having to change their own behaviors. Luckily, there are a lot of leaders now who are wanting to get beyond this and are not so driven by their egos and their comfort that they want to create better cultures. So business models have evolved as new opportunities have emerged. So too should culture models evolve now that we know better than ever what makes an environment effective for humans to do their best work, avoid burnout, reduce turnover, and increase business results at the same time. As an entrepreneur, you have the opportunity to be part of this first wave of change, to take advantage of being a business owner that can maximize productivity and ingenuity and be a leader who intentionally sets up a culture that people love. The opportunities with intentional company culture are a win-win. So there's no real reason not to do this, right? You did a great job sticking around with me through the historical context. In the next video, we're going to have a deeper look at how the pandemic affected our understanding of company culture and the modern workplace. I'll see you there.